So I want to talk about a search we did today that was different than the usual that when you discuss a search that you're doing for one of your companies that you're working with. Normally, you talk about how you brilliantly found like a real needle in the haystack kind of candidate that nobody can find and all the brilliant processes you went through to get them. But what happens when you have the exact opposite happening? There's a position open that a lot of candidates could fill, and you really need to be able to like narrow down who will fit in the company profile because a lot of people could do the technical aspect. So our one of our clients, who is a company benefits administration company, had this exact issue, and I'm hoping you could tell a little bit about what happened and what they were looking for.
Right, Bonnie. So they were looking for a senior help desk technician, and the team is small, so they also needed to do some engineering. They needed somebody to build provisioning packages, they needed somebody who could script and also function as a help desk technician. They wanted to automate some manual processes, so there was a lot there that they needed this person to do.
Right, and I understand though there's a lot of people though that can do these particular skills.
That is true. There's a lot of people with a help desk type background.
Right. So I suspect that the manager would probably have to would get tons of resumes and have to weed through so many. So how did you approach it to try to like get someone who would fit in the company culture, who still had this background? What did you do?
Well, that's so true about the high volume of resumes. Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard for the managers when they're trying to do their regular job and go through all the resumes and doing all the interviews. So that was one of the problems he was having. And he was also like losing good candidates to other opportunities because the process was moving too slow. They were thinking they wanted to hire somebody full time as a full time employee, but then when we discussed it, we talked about possibly doing a right to hire so the whole process could move quickly. And also, they were giving this role like the title senior help desk technician, but since there was some engineering to it, it's like the role and the title didn't match. And for consulting, that mattered less.
I see what you're saying, right? So the title was something to also help drive which way you were going to go.
Right. So as I mentioned, the title's not as important. Another thing in their full-time process, they don't let the team members interview. It's only managers can interview. That's something that happens at this firm. But in a consulting process, the team could interview the candidates as well. I think that's great for everyone involved because you get a sense of the environment. It's like for the candidate, they can see what the environment's like, who their teammates are going to be. And I think that makes for better matches when
Right?
that can
How
happen.
important is it that you can work with the coworkers in your area? And that could
Right.
make or break a situation. That's
Right.
true.
And especially since this was a right to hire, so they would start as a consultant and then go to become a full time employee.
Right.
So it's really important to have a good match in that regard.
True. So what happened in the process? What came about?
Well, what was great that we had a few people interview. We've been building our database in this area for many years. So we did know a lot of the candidates already. So it was easier for us to screen for the client. And we were able to get somebody from submittal to start in 32 days.
Right, which is a big deal because you said they were losing a lot of people due to the lengthy process.
That's true. And they found a really great candidate so he was a consultant and they ended up hiring him as a full time employee and he was promoted twice in the past 2 years. So he's been a really great addition to the team. And one story that the hiring manager passed along to me is that there was a device trust issue and exchange name policy issue that a well known vendor couldn't solve. And the vendor advised our consultant like not to touch it, that it would be very cumbersome and that he wouldn't even be able to get close. And the manager said the next day our consultant provided a great solution that was not cumbersome, and they were all so thrilled that it solved the problem. He also was able to automate many manual processes for them. So he's been a great fit, and the manager wrote to me about him and said, "It turns out that he's the pinnacle of this department. Wow. Hands down, he's phenomenal. Without him, the team would not have been able to accomplish half the things that they were able to. If you present a problem to him, he won't rest until he finds a solution, and it's a very innovative one, too.
Sounds like it was a fantastic match.
Yes, and it's great that he's still been there for years.
So you definitely made a good match. I guess having a database of people who you know and you could really put together knowing the company culture is a definite benefit.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I also want to read a quote, and I always like to give a little quote on what the manager says because I know a lot of managers are so bogged down sometimes with so many resumes, and they just don't want to have to like, weed through all of them. They want someone who could just give them a couple and then select from those. So this is what the manager said. There's a difference working with Jody. I think that experience talks. It's knowing what to ask. It's how to interview us to find out what we really need. And again, I thought that was a wonderful thing to hear, especially a manager's busy and they need someone who could really just help them and know what they're looking for.
We were thrilled that we were able to help them.